The privilege paradox: advantages, disadvantages, and society's focus. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Information for Life, Insights and Ideas to Navigate Your World. In today's installment, we review an intriguing linguistic and sociocultural issue, the use of the term privilege, as opposed to advantage. We'll examine how language shapes our societal perceptions and actions, exploring the nuances that define these words and the impact they have on our collective discourse. The language of privilege. In contemporary social discourse, the term privilege has grown increasingly prevalent, often used to denote an unearned societal advantage that certain individuals benefit from due to their race, gender, economic status, or other factors. Privilege has become an integral part of our conversation on social inequality based on a 3-page magazine article published in Peace and Freedom magazine, 1989, called White Privilege: Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, McIntosh, 1989. The article can be found here, https://psychology.umbc.edu/wp-content/upload/sites/57/2016/10/white-privilege_McIntosh 1989 PDF. Yet, the nature of this term carries certain inherent challenges. When we label something as a privilege, we emphasize the individual who has the benefit while simultaneously sidelining those on the losing end of the social equation. We focus on what's given rather than what's taken or withheld. The consequence? A narrative that foregrounds the advantaged, often at the expense of understanding and addressing the disadvantaged. The term privilege, as it is used in current social discourse, continues to be the subject of ongoing debate and study. By 2021, scholars such as Eddo-Lodge, 2018, and Kendi, 2019, had done substantial work to illuminate the contours of privilege, examining how it operates in society and how it is perpetuated, both overtly and subtly. The language of privilege operates on multiple levels. It conveys, on the one hand, a certain perception of unearned advantage that accrues to individuals based on aspects of their identity that align with socially favored norms. Whether it's perceived to be due to race, gender, socioeconomic status, or other factors, the concept of privilege underscores that these advantages are typically systemic, pervasive, and often invisible to those who possess them. Eddo-Lodge, 2018. On the other hand, the use of the term privilege inadvertently centers the narrative around those who other people perceive to possess these advantages. This perspective overshadows the disadvantages and systemic inequities that others face. It places the onus on the privileged to recognize their privilege, leaving those disadvantaged by the system in a reactive or subordinate role within the conversation. Kendi, 2019. Furthermore, the discourse around privilege also inadvertently creates defensiveness or resistance among those being asked to acknowledge their privilege. People find it difficult to accept the idea that they've benefited from systemic biases if they've also faced struggles or hardships, and dismisses the concept that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. This discomfort derails conversations, leading to further divisions rather than fostering understanding and empathy. D'Angelo, 2018. Moreover, while the concept of privilege is incredibly useful in spotlighting societal disparities, some researchers argue that it leads to a certain level of passivity. Jost, 2019. If privilege is seen as an inherent, unchangeable aspect of society, it inadvertently discourages active efforts to change the status quo. Indeed, while the concept of privilege is useful for highlighting broad societal patterns, we must not apply it simplistically or homogeneously to every individual based solely on their skin color or other demographic characteristics. Such assumptions are overly reductionist and fail to capture the complexities and nuances of individual experiences. Firstly, it's essential to remember that the concept of privilege is thought to operate on many intersecting axes, including not just race, but also gender, class, sexuality, ability, age, nationality, and more. For example, a person might experience racial privilege while also facing disadvantages due to their economic status or gender identity. These intersections complicate, mitigate, or even negate certain aspects of privilege. Secondly, the concept of privilege is rooted in perceived systemic and structural biases and must not be used to discount individual experiences of hardship or struggle. Someone might belong to a so-called racially privileged group, yet face significant personal difficulties and disadvantages. In other words, privilege doesn't mean a person's life is without challenges. but rather that their skin color simply isn't one of the things making their life harder. Finally, making assumptions about an individual's privilege based solely on skin color in itself perpetuates harmful stereotypes and biases. For instance, presuming that all people of a particular race are privileged inadvertently erases the experiences of marginalized or disadvantaged individuals within that group. It also overlooks the diversity and complexity within racial groups and reduces people to a single aspect of their identity, ironically the exact opposite of what we all should be striving for. Advantage, an alternative perspective. Now let's consider the term advantage. By definition, this word signifies a condition or circumstance that puts one in a favorable position. Notably, it's a term that doesn't inherently exclude the notion of disadvantage, creating a dual-sided image of societal dynamics. Where privilege is often perceived as unchangeable or systemic, advantage naturally evokes its opposite, disadvantage. This opens a door to dialogue, fostering a climate in which we can actively identify, address, and rectify social inequalities. It also suggests a system that can be rebalanced, thereby fostering a sense of hope and a call to action. Adams, Bell, and Griffin, 2007. In this sense, the language of advantage and disadvantage can foster a more inclusive and constructive dialogue about societal inequalities. It allows us to not only identify and acknowledge these imbalances, but also actively work towards addressing and rectifying them. It suggests that these imbalances aren't static or immutable, but can be shifted and rebalanced. Adams, Bell, and Griffin, 2007. Importantly, this language also frames societal inequalities as something that can be fixed, rather than simply acknowledged. This can create a more hopeful and action-oriented approach towards social justice. It doesn't minimize the systemic nature of these inequalities, but rather highlights our collective potential to effect change. Quillian, 2014. The impact of language. The language we use can profoundly impact how we perceive and address societal issues. In the case of privilege and advantage, the framing of these terms significantly affects our conversations on social justice. Privilege emphasizes the systemic, unchanging aspects of social disparity, focusing more on the advantaged individuals rather than the system that maintains the advantage. In contrast, advantage highlights the situational and changeable aspects of social disparity, potentially promoting a more active engagement in rectifying the disadvantages faced by others. While both privilege and advantage have their places in our social discourse, it's important to recognize the subtle implications that come with each term. Our linguistic choices play a significant role in shaping our perceptions of social inequality and ultimately the actions we take towards creating a more equitable society.